Hey, what's up everybody? This is 8-Bit Flashback, and today we're going to check out the Easy Flash Jr. Now this is a flash cart that's designed to work with the original Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Pocket, and even the Game Boy Advance. And here's a look at the Easy Flash cart, and this thing is incredibly simple to use. After you get that micro SD card pre-configured with the necessary files, all you have to do is drag and drop the games onto your micro SD card, and it's ready to play. You can play all your Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games on these consoles.
This flash cart really brings back memories of playing my Game Boy for hours upon hours, hoping my batteries would last on those long road trips, and staying up late on school nights with a flashlight so I could see my screen while my parents thought I was asleep, and getting a bad case of Nintendo thumb from playing way too much.
And for anyone out there who is interested in getting one of these flash carts, I did get mine from ploylab.com, and they do have a bunch of other cool stuff on their site as well, and I'll make sure to put a link down below in the description. Before using the Easy Flash Jr. for the first time, you will have to get it pre-configured with some download files that will be available on the Easy Flash website, and I'll make sure that link is down below in the description. On this page, go ahead and scroll down to where it says download, then click on this and save it to your computer. This will be in a zip archive. Go ahead and open this archive up, and inside there will be the files we need to add to our micro SD card. So on the left side of the screen here is going to be the zip archive that I just downloaded that contains the files I need to add to my micro SD card. And on the right side of the screen is going to be my micro SD card that I do have pre-formatted with FAT32. And really, we only need to add two of these files to the micro SD card. One of these will be the easygb.dat file, and the other one will be an update file, which is optional. You can use this file to update the firmware if you do not have the current firmware. As far as the games go, it does not include any games, so you will have to find those on your own and get those added to the micro SD card in an unzipped format. With my current micro SD card setup right now, I do have 3 different folders inside here. I have a Game Boy folder, a Game Boy Color folder, and a root folder, which is just for testing purposes and has nothing to do with this video. The Game Boy and the Game Boy Color folders do contain games, and there's not a whole lot of rules when it comes to adding the games, but they do recommend that you don't add more than 32 directories to the root of the micro SD card, and they also recommend not to have more than 100 items in each folder. Now I do have a Game Boy Color folder that contains 119 items, and I have not had any issues, so if you keep it close to 100 items, you should be fine. And the folders do not have to be name specific. You can name these folders whatever you choose. And as I just mentioned, that micro SD card should be formatted with FAT32, and they also mentioned that you should have the allocation size at 32 for the best performance. Okay, I got my micro SD card all pre-configured and ready to go. Now let's check out some more features with the Easy Flash Jr. So I think this is a pretty cool looking flash card. It does resemble the original Game Boy Color cartridges, as you can see here. The main differences in the cartridge shell would be the notch in the corner. For the Game Boy Color games that are not compatible with the original Game Boy, they do not feature that notch. So I'll show you what happens when you try to turn it on. You can't, because it just hits the cartridge. But with this flash cart, it does feature that notch, so it fits the original Game Boy no problem. To load your games, they go on a micro SD card, and that micro SD card access is right here. You just push on that and it'll pop out. And I am using a 16GB micro SD card that's formatted with FAT32, and you can use up to a 32GB micro SD card. So one very cool feature with this flash cart is it features a reset button. So right here, if you press on the front, there is a micro switch inside here, and this allows you to reset the cartridge and pick another game. That way you don't have to turn your Game Boy off and on just to pick another game. So it's kind of hard to see, but it's located right here. If you just press down on this, you can hear it clicking inside there. And this does feature a battery for game saves. And I have personally tested this flash cart with all of these Game Boy handhelds, and I can confirm it works with all of these. Now I do have a Game Boy Color clone right here, and I got this a while back. This is actually a really cool handheld. It's got a backlit screen, and it pretty much emulates what the Game Boy Color does, but it has some built-in games along with that backlit screen. But unfortunately, this flash cart does not seem to work with this little clone handheld. I'm not sure what the issue is, but it just doesn't work. Now I do have a couple of these Easy Flash carts. The first one I got was a while back, and this is called the Omega Easy Flash Cart. And this is more designed for the Game Boy Advance. This will play Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, NES games, and Game Boy Advance games. But this does not work on the original Game Boy or Game Boy Color or Game Boy Pocket. That's where this flash cart comes in handy, because it does work with those older Game Boy handhelds such as the Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Pocket. And I have heard that this flash cart is compatible with some of the modded Game Boys out there with upgraded backlit screens. Unfortunately, I don't have a upgraded Game Boy with a backlit screen to test this, but I have seen some videos out there showing that this does work with the upgraded screens. So for the gameplay test, I'll be testing that on the Game Boy Advance, but I'm going to quickly show you that this does work on the rest of these Game Boy handhelds. We'll start with the original Game Boy. And it might be kind of hard to see the screen here. Where's the contrast? Now I have noticed on the older Game Boys that it does make somewhat of a humming sound when you first load the cartridge, but not while you're playing any of the games. So I'm not really sure what the issue is there. So here's a look at the main menu. This is what's located on the root of my micro SD card. I have a firmware update file, a Game Boy folder, and a Game Boy Color folder. And then I have another test folder that's called root that has nothing to do with this. That's just a test folder. So we'll quickly test a Game Boy game. So let's try some Mega Man. And I know this is really hard to see on the screen here. Turn the volume up. So you can see it's working here. And again, I'm going to show you more gameplay on the Game Boy Advance. That way we can see the game better. So now, as I was saying earlier, there is a reset button in here. So if I just push the back of this cartridge, that'll reset the cartridge and reboot the Game Boy. So I'll go ahead and push the back of this. And then that reboots it and takes you back to the main menu of the micro SD card. And quickly I'll show you a Game Boy Color game. Now again, some of the Game Boy Color games are compatible with the original Game Boy, but I don't have a compatibility list. I'm not sure exactly which ones they are. I'm just going to pick a random Game Boy Color game here. Let's try Croc 2. And now we have a message there saying can only be played on Game Boy Color. So this is one of those games that's not compatible. Okay, let's go ahead and test the Game Boy Color out now. And let's go ahead and try Croc 2 again since I couldn't get that to work. It looks like the game is working just like it should here. And this is not emulation because we're using the original hardware, so this works just like the original game would have. Okay, let's try the Game Boy Pocket now. Let's go ahead and try some Battletoads. Okay, it looks like we're good to go with the Game Boy Pocket. I don't see any problems with the gameplay here. We'll test the reset out. And that's a really nice feature. Previous flash cards, you had to turn the console off and on to get it back to the main menu. I really like that extra feature. Okay, now let's go and test out the Game Boy Advance, and we can finally get some color happening with a backlit screen. So here's what the main menu looks like when we boot up the flash cart, and we do have a couple different options at the top, and we can scroll through those by pushing the select button. So here is the select button, we're going to push that. So we push select, that scrolls through settings, and we can do the auto save. And we can also change the date. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Push select again. And this is telling me what the firmware version is. I'm on firmware 4. And then in the root directory of the micro SD card, we have a couple different folders plus a firmware update that I added earlier. To perform the update, it's super simple. You just highlight the update and then select it with the A button, then follow the directions, and eventually you end up rebooting the console with the new firmware. Now, I already have the latest firmware, which is version 4, so there's no reason for me to update. Let's try some games out. We'll go to the Game Boy folder. Let's try Batman. So this is an original Game Boy game that has a little bit of color added to it because of the Game Boy Advance features. So out of all the games I've tested, I've not run into any issues with any of the games not playing properly or loading. Everything seems to be playing just like it did on the original handhelds. As far as the game saves go, I don't think there's any sort of game state save. There's just the battery saves. So the games that originally had some sort of battery save would work the same way on this flash cart. We'll go ahead and try Duke Nukem. Alright, let's go ahead and try a different game. So here's one issue I have run into with this flash cart. Maybe 1 out of 20 times I end up with this message right here when I push the reset button on the cartridge. Micro SD initial OK. And then I'm just stuck on the screen. So I end up just pushing the reset button on the cartridge again. And then it boots back up like it should. So I'm not sure what's causing that. It just happens every once in a while. And it's not that big a deal, but I thought I should bring it up. So guys, if you're looking for a flash cart that can play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on your original Game Boy handhelds, this flash cart might be what you're looking for. As far as the performance, I think it works really well. I have noticed a couple minor issues and I tried to bring that up, but overall, this thing works really solid. Okay and guys, it's time to get out of here. If you like this video, if you could, hit that like button and have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.